All right, thanks, Kat. And good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the DDD and U webinar for December. As you know, the topic for the webinar is around peer support, and I have shared many times over the years how important that I believe peer support is. And I say that because peer support came at a very critical point in my life, and I am so very grateful to have had the opportunity to speak to another mom when I needed it the most. For this webinar, I have invited Mary Turner and Stacey Gilkey to join me to also share their perspectives around peer support as well. And on today's webinar, we're going to hear from the three of us and hear our peer support stories. You will learn where peer support can be found, and we'll give you a few resources where you can connect other families and individuals to peer supports as well. So I'm going to go ahead and get us started and just kick off the conversation. This is a picture of me and my daughter, my youngest daughter. I'll just tell you my story, and most folks know that I am a mom. I have two daughters, and my youngest daughter has developmental disabilities, and this is her in the picture with me. Shortly after she was born, I began to suspect that there were some health concerns. As time went on, she continued to struggle in many areas and then began not meeting some of the critical developmental milestones. However, her pediatrician at the time just kept telling me that I was being too overly cautious. I needed to stop comparing her development to that of her older sisters, and we would leave and come back. And we continued with these same concerns throughout her first year. So at her 1-year checkup, that same pediatrician very abruptly told me without any delicate touch, there is something wrong. You need to take her to a neurologist and have tests done. And so before I left his office, he gave me the number to Children's Hospital, and he told me that I needed to call and make that appointment on that day if I could. So, kaboom, there I was, instantly frozen. I swear I could not move. I couldn't speak for a few minutes. I really couldn't do much of anything. And stunned is really the word that I would use there, like something out of a movie where it feels like you've been transported out of real life momentarily. I really felt like a ton of bricks had just been dropped on top, and I did not know what I was going to do about it. So everything, and I've seen everything, came to a halt and changed in that 1 second. And just sitting here today talking to you about that, those feelings and emotions of panic and numbness kind of come right back up to the surface, and you just don't forget something like that. So after I gathered myself together, got my emotions in check, I gathered our stuff and headed home. I made that appointment at Children's Hospital the very next day, and my husband and I prepared to take her to that first visit, still completely bewildered by everything that had just happened and what we had been told. And it was actually fear, which is probably the best word to describe the fear of the unknown, not knowing where we were headed, what we were dealing with. We didn't know where her future actually was headed. And now we had to sit and wait for that first appointment. And it really felt like we were sitting on a ticking time bomb. So fast forward about 2 weeks later, I was still in a fog, and one afternoon, out of the blue, my phone rang. On the other end was this person that said, you don't know me, but someone shared kind of what you and your family were going through, and I just wanted to reach out. She said, I'm a mom, and I have walked that journey. Now, reminding you that I lived in a very small town at the time, and so news traveled very quickly, and this was pre-text, pre-internet, pre-messages, so word had traveled by mouth that we were experiencing some challenges with our youngest daughter. So if I can remember correctly, I just kind of began talking to her through tears and describing our situation. And after I composed myself a little, we were able to have a really good conversation. And that phone call actually lasted probably an hour and a half, almost 2 hours long. She probably had no clue what she was getting into and probably wondered who she was really talking to on the other end. But her reaching out to me when I was in the greatest need gave me a new vision. And most importantly, it gave me hope. And in fact, that mom and I formed a pretty good relationship. She encouraged me to go to workshops, go to conferences, get involved with trainings, and she introduced me to different advocacy opportunities. And she accompanied me to my daughter's first IEP meeting, basically held my hand and walked me through step by step what I needed to do. And I just cannot express enough what a blessing she was and what that call meant to me. I am so grateful that she took the opportunity to reach out. I finally felt connected. I felt like I could see some direction. I finally felt like someone else in the world got it and someone understood where I was in this new journey and that I was no longer alone. I think that was so important. I remember reaching out to my family and friends as well. And unfortunately, they weren't able to really relate to what we were going through. They were there to kind of help walk beside us and help us out along the way, but they really weren't able to understand what I was going through. So, and I remember her saying to me on the phone that, it may not be what you expected, but it's going to be okay. There's other ways to look at this. So, and that's not the only time that peer support has been a true blessing to me over the years. As I continue my journey as a parent and being a caregiver alongside my daughter, I continue to find that peer support is one of the best supports I have available to me. I love feeling like I have found a tribe, so to speak, that I can reach out to someone who can relate and to folks who understand. So anyway, I know that I'm not the only one who has shared those kinds of experiences. I know my story is one of many. Peer support is very beneficial to so many people in so many different situations, whether it's having a child with a disability or unique health challenges, or someone who has just received a challenging medical diagnosis. You might think of like breast cancer. I've had friends and family members, and I know that their peer support in those situations have been extremely beneficial to them. I would say that having support from a peer or a mentor can be absolutely beneficial and very much life-changing. So enough about me. I'm going to quit sharing now, and I'm going to turn it over to Mary Turner so that she can share her story and perspective as well. Mary, if you're ready.
And thank you, Lisa. So my name is Mary Turner, obviously, and I am the mother of 3 children. My second child was born at 24 and a half weeks of she was premature. So we knew from the get-go that a 1 pound, 8 ounce baby girl was going to have some challenges as she went through life. I can't tell you how many times the doctor, well, actually I can tell you, 7 times the doctor called us and told us that we needed to plan for Sarah to no longer live. And 1 time they told us that we needed to plan on institutionalizing her, that she would never, quote unquote, be normal. One of the most difficult times, though, was when Sarah was in the ICU and the doctors came to us and told my husband was there with me, and told us that Sarah was splinted and that she was a failure to thrive baby. Being 30, I had no idea what those terms meant, and all I knew is that it sounded particularly ominous. And the doctor explained that for Sarah, every breath that she took, it was like someone that took 8 times the amount of energy of somebody who didn't have a splinted chest. And really what they were saying is that her rib cage couldn't expand like everybody else's could, and her lungs were damaged. And I remember thinking, okay, I can do this, I can do this. But a friend called, someone who I had met when we were in the NICU unit. And I don't know how she knew to call me on that particular day. I would guess it was probably divine intervention. Or maybe somehow she got word we were going through a very difficult time. And she called, and it was interesting because they brought the phone to me at my daughter's bedside. Again, kind of an unusual situation. And she asked me if I was okay. And I said, yeah, I'm okay. I can do this. I'm a little bit of a stubborn German. And I remember just thinking, pull up your big girl panties, Mary, you can do this. And finally she said, Mary, can you really do this, or do you need a friend? Well, that turned on the waterworks for me, and I said, yes, I need a friend. And she was there in probably 15 minutes. It was someone who'd gone through something similar. To this day, she and I have remained very close friends. I can't tell you how many situations she has walked through with me when we've been faced with difficulties with Sarah and her healthcare and her disabilities and so forth. She attended a IEP with me, similar to Lisa's experience, where we wanted something for our child that the school district wasn't really willing to invest the time and energy and money in. And I remember her squeezing my hand and holding me tight whenever the principal said, you know, if you make this decision, then the responsibility for Sarah is up to you. Can't lie, I kind of laughed at that. And I said, well, Sarah's responsibility has always been up to us. So we went ahead and fought the fight and got what we wanted from the IEP. However, the thing that I think is most critical to hear is that we all feel like at times we're on this journey alone. And at times we'll have different people reach out to us and want to take a walk beside us. But it's the people who've had that lived experience that know the most what it feels like when you're alone and afraid and you're hoping you're making the right decisions. And I was very blessed to have that person walk along beside me. I've always said that if I was going to do a doctorate dissertation on anything, it would be on connection and collaboration and having people who can walk with you in some of those life journeys, and the difference that it makes whenever you have that connection versus when you are trying to walk that alone, primarily because you don't know what else to do, but just to keep putting one foot in front of you, the next foot, and moving forward. I was grateful for my peers. I've been able to be a peer for other people, been able to attend IEPs with other people. And really the whole point of it is to be able to help them have their voice and advocate for what they need for the children that they have, that they're involved with in their lives. Thank you, Lisa.
Oh, thanks, Mary. And you're so right. I appreciate you sharing your story. The lived experience is what really helps make that difference. Again, like I said, I had family and friends that were by my side, but not really able to relate to some of the feelings I was having, and the fear that I talked about, and that moment of panic that I went through. It makes a difference. The lived experience is really beneficial.
I think, Lisa, sometimes that I'll be quiet and let Stacey talk. I think sometimes when it's a family member, they're so confused about things and so feeling your pain, but in a different way, that they
Right.
don't know how to be the kind of support that you absolutely need because they haven't been in the same shoes. They've walked with you, but not the same shoes. So they'll say things that they hope are encouraging, but often they're not particularly encouraging. It's just kind of they mean well, but they don't always have the right, again, a lived experience.
Right. And, from the grandparents' perspective, my mom has shared, not only was I seeing my granddaughter go through some challenges, but I was watching my daughter and her family go through those challenges. So she got the double, right? And not knowing what to do is, she's talked about how she felt incredibly helpless at that time too. So having the peer support was a big help. And then me actually flipping it around and helping her. So anyway, so thank you very much for sharing. Stacey, are you still there?
I am still here.
Great. Well, I know that your story is just a little bit different, but you have a very impactful story about your journey as well. So if you want to share. Whoops.
Okay, thank you. My name is Stacey Gilkey, and I'm a mom of four. I have two boys and two girls, and my two boys have an autism diagnosis. My oldest son is 25, so this is kind of his little bit of his story in our journey. Like Lisa said, my story is a little different. When I started my journey with my oldest son, who's now 25, I didn't have any peer support, or to be honest, any support at all. My son had been given multiple diagnoses, but nothing really fit. I worked for a local school district at the time, and they sent me to an autism training. And about halfway through, it was like a 4-day training. And about halfway through, I'm like, this makes sense. This is my child. So I researched on who to see, what doctor to go to. I remember getting that diagnosis and thinking, okay, we have it, but now what do we do with it? I worked very hard after that to educate myself on not only autism, but the IEP 504 process, because our first IEP was a disaster. I had no support with me. They were talking at me using all of these words that I did not know what they meant. I worked very hard to get the services my son needed. The journey through all of that was rough, but it taught me to be an advocate. And later in life, when I had my other son, I was more prepared when the process started with him. I now have the ability to help others through their journey and to help navigate the system and to not let another parent feel lost in an IEP meeting or a doctor's appointment or anything surrounding their child. All of this experience set me up for the career I have now as a family support program coordinator. And I have a team that helps parents every single day with that peer support. Because, like Mary said, you have family around you, but it's not the same. They might be, helping you through your journey, but they do not have that hands on, everyday, what it's like journey. So, peer support, I believe in that 100%. It is the best thing. And now I have it because I knew where to seek it. But back then I didn't. So I'm so glad that these kind of things happen, that connects all of us. Lisa, that's my story.
Great. Thank you very much. And you're right. It's the connected, it's the networking where you feel like you're in your, like I said earlier, almost in your tribe of like-minded folks, right? So
Right.
let's take a few minutes and talk real quickly about where people can tap into different peer support services. And Mary, I know you're the director of the Missouri Family to Family Resource Center at UMKC. And I know that there's a great emphasis on supporting families there. Can you give us a little more information about what MOF2F is and what is available there around peer support?
Absolutely. So Missouri Family to Family has been around for over 30 years. Actually, every state has a resource center that came about as a result of a legislative process when John F. Kennedy was president. But they take on different forms throughout the states. They could be called a parent-to-parent association or family voices or a UCED, University Center for Disabilities. And we are under the University of Missouri, Kansas City UCED. So we're in the Institute of Human Development, a division. So what we are is we have several different, what I call pillars to our services, and I'm going to be super brief so I can get into the peer support component. You can call us and get in immediate information and referral services. That's usually a 15-30-minute phone call where you need to know where to go in your community or in the state to connect with the resource for a family member. So you have a plan, you know what you're doing, you just need some additional information on where to go next. Then we have what's called navigation. Navigation is always done by peer support. And so that's someone who has a lived experience that is trained, and we put them through 3 or 4 different trainings before they can become a navigator. And a navigator will help you really start developing a plan using the Charting the Life course tools. And this is typically when someone just gets a new diagnosis. They don't know what they're being faced with. They have no idea where to turn or how to find out some information. And so our navigators spend more time with you to help you to understand a little bit more about the diagnosis or diagnoses that you've received, both developmental and or physical or mental health diagnosis, and then help you craft a plan for moving forward. Then we have what's called peer support, and peer support is kind of our cream of the crop, if you will. So this is someone, again, with a lived experience who will help you do the navigation piece, but they will follow along with you anywhere from 1 week, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 12 weeks, as long as a year's period of time agreed upon by both the peer mentor and the family they've been matched with. in order to really help you get moving solidly on all the plans, because you may start with knowing one thing that you need to do, and then as you get further and further into understanding the diagnosis, you may come up with additional things that you need to face and to build plans for. In addition to that, peer support that we provide in the navigation and information referral, we also do training both for leaders, and we do education for our constituents and stakeholders and other professionals, as well as family members. And to get our help, really, Lisa has up on the screen, the best way to contact us is through the website that you see there, or to call us, and I will put my email in the chat, and you guys are more than welcome to contact me directly through email, and we will connect you with the appropriate response, either information referral, navigation, or connect you with a peer who can be that emotional support and walk beside you. They are trained on how to do an IEP process. They're trained on the resources in the community, and they're trained just to be a listening ear to teach you some advocacy skills for yourself and your family members.
Oh, that's great, Mary. Thank you so much. That was a great overview. I would definitely encourage folks to go to the website and check out the information that's there, or to call and just visit with one of the navigators that you have on staff. Missouri Family to Family has been part of my life, my family's life, for many years. My daughter's 33, so I can remember way back when it first started, and that was the place to call because internet didn't exist at that time. So we would call family to family and get some of the resources that we needed and make copies and share with other families that we knew as well. Stacey, you worked for, oh yeah, go ahead.
So I should have said, just so everybody knows, we have peer supports throughout the entire state. We have 400 peer mentors that are trained. And so we do match based on not only the demographics, the diagnosis, but also the region of the state the person is living in. I'm sorry I didn't mention that before.
Yeah, and I think too, if I remember correctly, I mean, you guys are also connected to a national family to family, so that if somebody would happen to call in and be looking for a very specific, maybe a diagnosis that's a very rare situation and wanting to connect, you guys could go even to a higher level and connect on a national platform and reach out to, correct, like a national
Absolutely.
family to family. Yeah.
We are on multiple listservs, and so if we can't find someone locally, because for instance it might be a very rare or unusual diagnosis, then we go into our pool of supports with the national organizations throughout the nation.
Cool. That's great. All right. So Stacey, I know that you worked for a behavioral health organization, and your organization also serves a lot of families. You serve individuals and youth as well. You mentioned that you were the coordinator or the program coordinator for the Family Support Provider Services. Can you give us a little more information on that and how someone might tap into that service?
Yes, to get into our family support services, you have to have a case manager in our youth program, and we work pretty much hand in hand with them. While they work with the child, we work with the parent. We do a lot of IEP meetings, a lot of resources, just kind of walking beside them, trying to get the child the services that they need. They do have to, in our program, they have to have Medicaid. But yeah, we pretty much have a huge thing of what we can do.
And because your system or your organization is in the Kansas City area, I went ahead and added the map because there are community mental health centers all across the state. There is a link at the bottom of that PowerPoint slide where you can click and go to what you see on the slide. You will come up with a map, and you can enter in your county and find what community mental health center is in your area. Do all mental health centers have FSPs on board?
Yes, I think every one of them has at least one.
Okay. So there's a perfect peer support right there. It might be right in your back door even. So where,
Right. And our
Family-
FSPs have to have that lived experience. That is our main requirement to be able to do the job is having having the lived experience.
True, and they go through 3 days of training to be certified, so to speak. So they go through all kinds of training with Stacey and another team of FSP leaders that bring them up in the system and help them work better with the families that they support. So
Right.
great. So I'm going to add the division just not too awful long ago also added family peer support services through the Partnership for Hope waiver. It's not a service that's up and running completely yet, so it's open for development. I've added a quick link here on the slide. There's a waiver fact sheet you can check out. And we also did a presentation about family peer support services. There's a recorded webinar and a Q&A page there for you to check out as well. So if that's something you're interested in and you get services through the division with the support coordinator, you might bring that to their attention and investigate that a little bit. So we've just shared some places where you guys can find peer supports, but there's also other places that peer support could be in a more informal way. I know that my support coordinator, or my daughter's support coordinator over the years was very instrumental in connecting families together. They knew the other families in the community, and sometimes I would reach out and say, hey, if you've got another family in the area, please feel free to give them my name, my number, and I've made connections that way over the years. And Stacey and Mary, you guys can chime in here if you think of something else to add too. Another place you might consider is reaching out to some of the provider agencies that are in the area. I know many folks have peer support services there. I know there's some in St. Louis. I know there's some around the Kansas City area for sure. Down in Springfield, some of those provider organizations have support groups for families. That'd be something else you could reach out to, because that's a natural place for peer supports to begin to develop. Some of the larger organizations that I think about is like the Down Syndrome Association. I happen to know somebody who received services from them, and luckily now in today's time, those families don't even have to leave the hospital without support. The Down syndrome folks at the association will reach out to the parents that maybe have just given birth to a child, and those families actually go home already having some peer support opportunities in place. So that's pretty cool. I'm glad that's a great step forward in that area. I've also talked to some healthcare folks, our doctor, our family physician. I've always reached out to her and again, given her the permission to share my name and information with other families that she comes across. I have always spent a little bit of extra time at our appointments telling her about some of the resources that I'm aware of and making connections to some of the other families in that manner as well. School systems, obviously, good places. You're running into the same folks in the hallways. If your child gets any kind of special education services, you might be running into some of those other families in that same arena. I know when my daughter was in school, the special education teacher that she got services from actually set up monthly meetings for some of the families, and lots of families got connected in that manner, and we stayed connected outside of school related events. So good place to meet other families. The last but not least is always the social media. There are so many online opportunities to connect to folks that are, again, might be experiencing the same diagnosis that you are. Different things, even assistive technology. If you have questions that you might want to ask of folks that use different technology, there's places for that. There's places for individuals with disabilities to make peer connections as well. You know, People First of Missouri is one of them. So I would say if you're a support coordinator or a provider staff and you've listened to this webinar, please do not forget that adding peer support services to the list of things that you can offer families and individuals. And some of these are at no cost, so you can just reach out. Missouri Family to Family is one of them. Just get those families pointed in the right direction. So Mary, Stacey, do you guys have any last minute thoughts you want to share?
I would just encourage everyone, my experience in being a peer support person for another family member is you get as much reward out of being a peer support as the support that you give to another person. So don't, so if you get to the point that you're ready to be a peer support, let us know and we'll help you get connected and how to become one of those. But if you're in a situation where you need a peer support, or you're working with family members who need a peer support, don't hesitate to contact any one of us in the panel, because we definitely want to fill that need in our communities.
Absolutely.
I absolutely agree with Mary. It is the most rewarding thing I've ever did is to help families, because you do feel so alone. And if I can help with that, it's the best thing ever.
Right. Good point. All right. Well, I want to say thank you to Mary and Stacey. Thanks so much. I've enjoyed hearing your stories, and I always enjoy hearing your perspectives and sharing your information and resources with us. And to everybody else on the call, I just want to say the next MODD DNU webinar will be scheduled for January 25th from 12:30 to 1. So thank you all for joining us, and have a good new year. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Lisa.
Thanks, Lisa.